Hello, my name is Yanni and I am a body talk practitioner and a friend of Vigour and Skills. And I have been invited here today to talk to you about the benefits of the 20-second hug. Now, hugging is something that we are all familiar with. It's a common practice. So why should we give this attention? Why should we be thinking about hugging for longer? And why should we also be aware of what we're doing when we're doing it? So as in, why should we be thinking about hugging when we're actually doing it? And that's really what I'm here to explain to you, because there are some marvellous things that happen in your body that really help to take you into a state of rest and repair, which I'll explain to you about in a minute. But just before we do that, I really wanted to give some attention to the emotions, because they are very important when we're thinking of these consciousnesses of hugging. And as body talk practitioners, we are taught that there are 5 main emotions, and that the purpose of the emotions is dynamic. They keep us in a state of dynamism, so they keep us acting, they keep us in flow, they keep us moving forward. They're a sort of propeller for our lives, if you like. And there are 5 main emotions. There are sadness, worry, grief, anger, and fear. And the way that we understand each of them is not as being negative, even though they might sound so, and we don't think of them in terms of polarity. So we don't think of them as being either good or bad. We just think of them as sort of existing as a spectrum, if you like. So if we were thinking about fear, for example, we would have courage at one end of the spectrum and we would have phobia at the other end. But they are all, and everything would lie in between, and it's all part and parcel of the same package of fear. And then we think of it as having a use. So we need some flavour within the spectrum of fear at any one time to get us and keep us moving. So they are incredibly useful. They are utterly dynamic, and they are essential to our lives. So why we are talking about them is that when we are not expressing our emotions, so when they are not being used for their purpose of moving us forward, they can quite often get stuck. And this is interesting because this is really where the problem starts. So it can be described as fear that paralyzes, or worry that starts playing like a stuck record in your mind and it stops you from acting or making decisions. Or you could think of grief that stops you from taking in new experience because you're stuck thinking about something that's lost or gone. Or sadness that burns away joy, or anger that festers and causes frustration. I think we all recognise having these feelings, and it's very common for this to happen. And viscerally, we feel it in the kind of icky tummy, or a fizzy feeling in our body, or, just a sort of sense of discomfort within. And there really is, what, as we understand it, emotion at the heart of this, and stuck emotion at the heart of this. So this is where the 20-second hug can really, really help you. And the 20-second hug, when you are in this warm, elongated, warm embrace, something very, very primal kicks in. It is the same thing that happens when a baby is placed on its mother's chest after birth. And it's a position of recovery and rest. So the embrace is the same as a child being put on its mother's chest after it's been born. It's in order so that you, the organism, can feel safe, go into a state of recovery, and go into a state of repair. So it's a very primal position to be in. It's very kind of brilliant thing that's happening when you're in this warm embrace, because the same thing today, if you did the 20-second hug, happens as to that baby when it's laid on its mother's chest. The heart rate begins to regulate. So that means that you have a kind of blood pressure that feels good and even. Your breathing begins to regulate, which means that you're taking in nourishing oxygen and getting rid of toxic CO2. It's literally energizing for you. And then what's also completely magical is the adrenaline for the baby, or the cortisol for us as adults. That is being inhibited by the warm embrace. So we are, by flooding the system with oxytocin, which is the love hormone, we are inhibiting the stress coming out into our bodies, the hormonal secretions of stress filling our body. And instead, we are replacing them with something that is nourishing, calming, restful, and restorative. So the 20-second hug holds a lot of promise, and it will deliver on all of these things. It is an absolutely measurable physiological thing that happens to you when you are in a warm embrace. And I think this is important to think about now more than ever, particularly as we are in a time where there are many changes, situations are stressful in different ways for everybody. But if we can learn to recognize in ourselves when we are not feeling good, when we are beginning to feel stuck, when worry or fear or sadness or anger is overtaking us, and then we can lean into a 20-second hug, we will do ourselves huge amounts of favors, because we will be able to release the stress as we take it on. We will be able to stop ourselves taxing our body and taxing our system with these kind of internalized emotions that wreak havoc on the body. And you will become more and more familiar with a state of well-being rather than more familiar with a state of stress, which is what I see in my clinic all the time, is people who are so familiar with stress that they have forgotten how to take care of themselves. So I really encourage you to practice the 20-second hug at home. I really encourage you to do it multiple times a day. I really encourage you to get used to a sense of well-being rather than to be familiar with a state of stress. And I encourage you to be in a state, in an environment where you can be nourished, where you can be healed, and where you can feel better. So I really hope that you get on with the 20-second hug.